sure you saw when you were there that we do have one from beyond Livingston County that's here with us this evening. So, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you to the board for inviting me out to speak, specifically Rob and Mary for getting this set up, and thankful for the community for showing up. We'll kind of take a deep dive here through agriculture in Livingston County, but also things that affect agriculture here in Livingston County, so beyond. A lot of things at the state and federal level really have an impact in our backyard here at the county level. So we'll begin. So a little background for myself. I am a partner at Noblehurst Farms. We are a 7th generation multi-family farm based in Linwood, New York. I serve on multiple boards and committees. I'm at the federal level with the National Milk Producers Federation, kind of at the state level with the Northeast Dairy Producers Association. I'm the president of the County Farm Bureau here in Livingston County, on the Farmland Protection Board, and on a couple other state boards. So this does take up a lot of my time, but I enjoy advocating for agriculture. A little fun fact is before I came back home to the farm, I coached college basketball. I had worked at places like Cornell, Georgia Tech, and Duke University. And the very little free time I have, I am a basketball coach at SUNY Geneseo as well. So I stay pretty active. So a little overview of what we do at Noblehurst Farms. So like I said, we're a 7th generation multi-family farm based in Linwood. We milk around 2,000 cows 3 times per day. We have a methane digester where we create enough electricity to power up to about 500 homes in our community if we so choose. We have multiple other businesses as well. We've got an equipment dealership, a consulting company, just multiple other businesses. One of those businesses is natural upcycling. So that would be the place down here in Pafard, the old Tabtronics building. So we had gone through and purchased that site. And so what natural upcycling is it is a business where we collect food waste and other materials, and we put them into our methane digester along with our cow's manure, and that's how we create that electricity. Right now, we feed our digester in Linwood, which is right on the farm, about 15,000 tons of food waste per month. So we're diverting roughly about 15,000 tons of food waste in our area to come to our farm to create electricity. We source the food from a lot of grocery stores and local universities, Wegmans, Whole Foods, Amazon. We're at Canisius University, Geneseo, University of Rochester, places like that. And we currently collect food waste from 16 different states. So we kind of are along the entire East Coast. We've kind of followed Wegmans around, and we've got a very good partnership with the Wegman family. So jumping into Livingston County agriculture, and what does it look like? So the top commodities that are produced in Livingston County, primarily dairy. We've got corn, vegetable crops, soybeans, and then some specialty grains. So these are like the top commodities that farmers here in Livingston County are producing, and kind of what we see while we drive around. So this is a whole overview of what the county looks like in terms of agriculture. So we've got about 612 farms in Livingston County as of 2022, about 196,000 acres of land. Average farm size is about 321 acres. We'll dive deeper into these numbers. So you can see here, again, 612 farms, about 196,000 acres in farmland. About half of those acres are using cover crops, conservation efforts like reduced tillage, no-till, things like that. So about 50% of the land in the county is using that kind of regenerative agriculture to try to improve soil health and be better stewards of the land. About half the land in the county is farmland. And we estimate about 1,000 jobs of on-farm production jobs are created by the farms within the county. So if you take all those 612 farms, that comes out to about 1,000 jobs that those farmers have created for people here in the county. So we break it up here by farm size and by the value of sales. So I like to highlight here on the right-hand side of this, so farms by size. So, well over 50% is anywhere between that 10 to 180 acre mark of farm size. So, in agriculture, sometimes, there's always the big guy, versus the little guy and things like that. Much more of this is brought up by small farms. So small farms are here to stay. They will be here, and there's still a lot of them. So when we see that industry consolidation, it does happen, but there's still a lot more small farms here than some people may think. It's easy to drive by some of these massive dairy sites and massive farms, but there's a lot of small farmers still here in our community, which is a great thing. And then you can see it by the value of sales as well, right? And a lot of that, is some of those smaller numbers would be some of your farm markets and places like that. So where we rank as far as the state, so where Livingston County ranks, so you can kind of see these numbers. So for grains, wheat, sheep, we're ranked number 1 in the state. So we do the most production here in Livingston County for that. Corn, that would end up for grain use, we're number 2 in the state. Soybeans, 5. Milk from cows, we're 7th, tied for 6th and 7th. Cattle, calves, equine, and ponies. So the economic impact, so this is the big number that I always like to throw out. So what do these farms produce an economic impact in Livingston County? So it's almost $300 million in products sold that farmers sell in Livingston County, and that's the products that we sell. A large driver of this is livestock, which is primarily dairy based here in Livingston County. So the dairy industry primarily brings in about $200 million worth of that $300 million number. And one of the most important things, when we farm in a community, we all try to be good neighbors, and we like to spend our money in the community. That's what farmers like to do. So when I, throw out there, we've created 1,000 jobs on farm. Really what we have created in the agricultural community is tens of thousands of jobs. I think of the local equipment dealers that we go and buy our tractors at and get the repairs done at and things like that. You got the sales guy, the mechanic, the feed mill's the same thing. The guys running the feed mill, everything like that. Thousands and thousands of jobs are created because we have these farms in Livingston County. And we spend the money back in Livingston County most of the time. So that's always kind of a nice fun fact. And over the last 10 years, we've actually had a $100 million increase. So that is, farms getting larger, products and markets, being a little bit more lucrative. We've had kind of a good go in the marketplace at the current moment in time, not too much, but we'll talk about that later. But so a lot of money comes in from agriculture that stays here in the county, which is great. So we'll focus on the dairy a little bit because that is the number 1 driver. So we are tied for 6th place in the state when it comes to the amount of cows that we have here in Livingston County. So there's 54 total counties in the state of New York that produce and ship milk and sell milk. So you can see here, we've got about 27,500 cows producing milk here in Livingston County. Shortly behind our neighbors in Genesee and Wyoming, and Cayuga County, they're out in central New York, has got quite a few cows. So these are the brands, some of the brands that consumers can identify with their food that's made here right in Livingston County. Obviously there's more, but the top there we've got the Wegmans brand, Perry's Ice Cream, Upstate Farms, Goya, so some of those are kind of the bigger brands that you might not necessarily think that Livingston County farmers have their hand in, but we do. Then we've got our craft beverage and wine products. So these are places like Woodlawn Distillery, Rising Storm Brewery, things like that. Those are all agricultural people producing hops, producing grains that factor into our agricultural overview. Then we've got farm stands and farm markets as well. J&A, Fire Creek Farms, places like that. That all impact what we do here in the county. So agriculture across the entire state of New York instead of just specifically to Livingston County. So there's about 31,000 farms in the state of New York with about 6.5 million acres of land. The average farm size of that is 212 acres. It's a little bit smaller than our average farm size in Livingston County, which is around that 312 acre mark. But an interesting bet. And then on the right-hand side here, you can kind of see where we rank as far as the state of New York in the nation. If we look at milk from cows, we're ranked 3rd in the United States for milk produced in the state of New York. I believe California and Wisconsin may be beating us out. So what's impacting Livingston County agriculture and really New York State agriculture? So we'll go through some of the things here. So solar is a big one. We've seen it, we drive by it. This is having an impact. Generational changes, younger generations coming back home to the farm. We're seeing an effect there. And politics, of course, coming out of Albany. These are just some of the impacts that we have. So solar, we estimate, somewhere around the 3,000 acre mark, and that number probably is higher now, of lost land in Livingston County due to solar projects. Across New York State, we have lost about 364,000 acres of ag land, but the largest driver of that is actually residential development. So residential development is still beating solar out by far, but as you can see, when you drive around the county here, you see some of these large solar projects going in, and it's a real challenge for us on how we want to manage that, and it's kind of a catch-22 issue, right? I don't want to be the guy that tells somebody they can or can't do something with their land. They own it. They should have the right to do what they want to do with it. But also at the same time, how do we protect the county's interest and the citizens' interest here in the county? Jump over to generational changes. So the average farmer in Livingston County right now is about 58, 59 years old. 8% of the farmers in the county are under the age of 35. 52% are between the 35 to 64 mark, and 40% is over the age of 65. So the average age of the farmer here in the county and across the country is an older generation, speaking in terms of that demographic. And where that comes a challenge is not having a younger generation to come back home to the farm. And that's kind of what leads people, maybe into the solar discussion, right? I don't have a child coming back home to take over the family operation. It's more lucrative for me to put my land into solar panels than it is to continue farming. And sometimes they just want to retire. Not everybody likes a 60-hour work week when they're 85 years old. So we see some challenges with that. Some things at the state level. So I go down to Albany a lot. I go down to Washington, D.C. a lot. I'm going to be in Albany next Tuesday. So there's a couple bills that are coming through Albany that we have seen, kind of been on my radar, and how are we trying to navigate those waters? One of them is this Extended Producer Responsibility Bill. We call it the EPR bill. This bill really aims to make producers responsible for the end-of-life management of the products that they sell. So this would have a huge impact on milk plants, feed mills, and places like that. So what they essentially want to do is, so if there's a gallon of milk that, say, Upstate Farms produces, and that comes in a gallon, they want to charge Upstate Farms the end-of-life management, the recycling portion of that milk jug. It's really more aimed for, the Amazons of the world, where, you've got 1,000 Amazon boxes that show up to your doorstep in a month. That's really what this bill is aimed towards. But they haven't put any provisions in there to protect agriculture. And that's really what we're fighting, because if that goes through, the prices will jump, and I can tell you the farmers are always usually the ones left on the sidelines, you know, picking up our pennies. So this is a huge bill that we're fighting against. There was a bill that was introduced late last year from a couple people from down in the New York City area, which was the dairy herd size limitation bill. It did not get much traction because it kind of got introduced at the end of session last year, but wouldn't be surprised if it gets brought up again. This bill would limit the DEC from allowing giving up CAFO permits to any farm of 700 cows or more. You know, that's competitive growth for us that we would lose out on. Puts us to a disadvantage to our neighboring states, so milk producers in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, puts us at a serious disadvantage. And just limiting farmers the ability to grow. And we feel like we should have the ability to grow as we would like to. Next bill, this bill was signed into law, and we will start dealing with it in 2029. This is the Birds and the Bees Protection Act. So this bill contains neonic treated seeds, so corn seed, soybean seed, and wheat seed. Has a neonicotite protective layer on it that kind of protects against, you know, different you know, strains like bugs and things like that. And in 2029, they signed this into law. In 2029, we will be restricted from using certain types of seed when we go out to plant our corn and our soybeans and our wheat. The factor here is, with that, we might see a potential yield loss when we go to harvest that crop, which is damaging to us because when you couple that with loss of farmland due to solar ground and things like that, and just the land basis that we have to work with, we cannot create more land. So we have to come up with a way, how do we create more with what we have? And this bill does not help us do that. So it has been signed into law, but still fighting the good fight for that, seeing if we can't get some revisions put in there. Another bill that we are dealing with right now is the Farm Laborers Fair Labor Practices Act. So this was signed into law a couple years ago. This just mandates farmers to pay overtime. So originally the threshold was set at 60 hours a week. So anything over 60 hours a week, we'd be responsible for paying that overtime. They have this in the works, so every 2 years, the overtime number drops down by four hours. By 2032, we will be down to a 40-hour week where farmers are then mandated to pay overtime. You know, personally, when this first came out, I was good paying overtime, you know, over 60 hours a week. We're farmers, we get dictated by Mother Nature. If, you know, we've got a rainstorm coming and I've got 200 acres of hay on the ground, we might have to work till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning to get that picked up so that we can do that. When it comes down to 40 hours, this is going to have a real huge impact on agriculture. So at our farm alone, the two highest line items that we have every single year, year in and year out, is feed costs and labor. So with this increase in labor, it's going to be a challenge. We're also trying to mandate the state government that you know, some added taxing, they use ag assessment values when calculating property tax. So that would be anything like your fire rescue tax, your library tax, and other ad value tax. Really just trying to save farmers some money when it comes to taxing on the district. You know, we think of, for a fire rescue, if I have a 100-acre field with nothing on it compared to a house, you know, we shouldn't be assessed at the same value. The need for the fire department to put out fire in a field is a lot less than a house. So we feel like that is important and gives farmers a fair shake. A lot of what I've been getting out of Albany this year, as session starts to heat up, is funding is going to be a real concern. I mean, anytime they try to make a budget, it seems like they've got to do it 4 or 5 times, right? But this year in particular, it's going to be a little bit of a tougher year. Reason being, reduced federal funding. So there's less federal funding coming into the state of New York. some escalating costs when it comes to school aid and Medicaid and things like that. The economic growth in the state has been in decline, so that could potentially affect some of the tax revenues. And it's midterms, so every politician is going to be fighting for dollars for their own district, trying to get reelected. So why is this a concern to agriculture? So a large majority of agricultural research, promotion, and environmental programs are funded by state and federal dollars. You know, we take Cornell University, for example. It's the largest research university in the state when it comes to agriculture. They're already feeling the impacts of that. I probably get an email at least once a month from somebody at Cornell, you know, saying this program's in jeopardy of being cut. And it's really important that we have these programs, because these are the programs that make farmers better. You know, this is where the research and the technology gets developed at, you know, that university level, and then gets implemented on the farms after they've got all the kinks worked out and things like that. So it's really important that we have those dollars so we can continue to be, you know, continue to evolve with the times, with technology and things like that. The other concern that I have is, with a budget concern, there are things that we have that are very friendly to agriculture right now, such as the overtime retention tax credit. So that is where, so farmers right now on that overtime scale, so at 52 hours is what we're down to right now of paying overtime. Anywhere between that 52 to 60 hour mark, farmers are getting a tax credit back to them when they go to file their taxes. The other thing we have is an agriculture investment tax credit right now, the ITC tax credit. So when farmers make an investment, they can get up to 20% of that back into a tax refund or a tax credit. That's been huge for farmers right now. These two things, the overtime retention tax credit and the ITC tax credit, the investment tax credit, that's allowed farmers to deal with this ship of overtime that we've been dealing with, and has been a struggle, because again, that is one of our highest line items that we have. And then the ability to invest into our future. You know, when we go to build a barn or buy a new tractor or things like that, having some of that money to help us make these large investments. So on the federal side, so when we go down to Washington, D.C. and meet with politicians there, so the biggest concern is immigration. That is the #1 talking point that I've been beating politicians for the last 2 years. That is our biggest concern. Secondly to that is tariffs. You know, personally, I think some of the tariffs have been good, some of them have been bad. What's really concerning is the change in the day-to-day that makes it concerning. You know, I thought we had a great trade deal done back in you know, July, August with the European Union, and then of course Greenland gets brought up and we don't know what's going on, right? So it's the change in the day-to-day that makes it really tough for farmers right now. And we have lost out on some marketplaces because of the tariffs. So soybean prices kind of took a plummet because we lost the marketplace in China for a couple months there, and that does have a real impact on farmers at the federal level, but also right here in Livingston County. Inflation has been a huge problem for us as well. Input costs have put a real stress on farmers. In 2024, across the nation, there's about $467 billion spent on input costs, so what farmers have to pay to grow that, you know, acre of corn or to grow that hay or whatever. It's a 31% increase from 2020. Trying to work with some administration at the federal level, you know, on looking up, you know, we feel as if maybe some of these companies have gotten to become almost a monopoly in the marketplace. And, you know, I mean, 30 years ago, you could buy corn seed from 15 different companies. Today, there's about 5 or 6 companies where you can go buy corn seed from. So have they monopolized the business? And I would stand here and say, you know, when we have more competition, that's better prices for us, right? So we look at overall farm economics. So at the current moment in time, farm economics are not in a good spot. You know, farmers are, you know, just putting their neck above water right now. It's been a little tough. We had some good years in the past, but typically with farm economics, it's cyclical. You know, it's a volatile marketplace, but we'll have our ups and we'll have our downs, and other years it'll be kind of flattened out. But at the current moment in time, we are hurting, right? So we take class 3 milk, so that's currently trading at around $15 to $16 a hundredweight. A year ago, that was around $24, so almost a $10 loss just in a year, right? Corn, trading around $4 a bushel right now. In 2022, it was around $8 a bushel, so 50% loss. Soybeans were around $10, or around $10 a bushel right now. 2022, they were trading around $17 a bushel. This would be like me coming to you and saying, you know, we're going to cut your salary by $30,000 this year and just figure out how to do it, right? It makes it really, really tough for us to continue to, you know, compete on the world stage here when prices are like this. Most important thing to remember, farmers are not price takers, farmers are price takers, they're not price makers. We do not get to set, you know, I can't say, okay, my gallon of milk today is going to sell for this much because there's a huge demand for it. It's set by the federal government, and we just have to take the price, right? And we work on razor thin margins. You know, we work in a penny counting business. You know, when prices go up by pennies, that has a real effect on whether it's going to be a good year or a bad year for us. So it is razor thin margins. So after you get through all the doom and gloom, I promise there's good news. That's always with agriculture, you know, there's a lot of doom, but I promise you that there is good news. So Governor Hochul gave her State of the State address here a couple weeks ago, and in that she had stated that she would like to see an extension put in to the overtime retention tax credit and the investment tax credit. So that is a huge win if we can get that through, and we can get that through the state Senate and the state assembly. That's going to be a huge win for farmers, and glad to see Governor Hochul, you know, had stated that. A couple weeks ago, we saw a huge win at the federal level. So there was a bill that got signed into law, Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act. So that bill allows for whole milk to go back into schools, so kids have a choice between skim milk, 1%, 2%, and whole milk. That's a huge win for us. Any win we can take at the federal level, we're always happy with it, and that's a big one for us. There was a lot of time and effort spent on that bill for probably about 3 to 4 years, and it was nice to finally see it, you know, make it out of the subcommittee and end up being signed into law. When it comes to the immigration stuff, so that is the biggest topic that I have when I go down to DC and meet with lawmakers. I have had multiple talks with House Ag Chair G.T. Thompson and Senate Ag Chair John Bozeman. They know immigration is a huge concern for us farmers. They are trying to come up with a solution. They have, G.T. Thompson specifically said to me, this was about 2 months ago when I was down in D.C., he had a couple other members of the House come over to him that normally wouldn't come over to that side of the aisle, say, you know, this is a big concern, we need to get something started, we need to get something in motion to protect agriculture. So that is a good sign. That makes me feel good about, you know, the lobbying and the advocacy that goes into all of this, and constituents complaining to their politicians, right? They are hearing our voices that we need some change, and we need some help when it comes to the immigration issue as it pertains to agriculture. You know, we need to have a legal workforce, and that's what we need to be able to do our jobs. Other good news in the state of New York, there's been over $3 billion invested in the New York State dairy processing capacity. So we've got plants like Fairlife up in Webster there, Great Lakes Cheese down in the southern tier, upstate Niagara is putting on another huge project. And Chobani, kind of out in central eastern New York, is putting on like $1 billion facility out there. So very good news, you know, as it pertains to the dairy industry in the state of New York at the processing capacity level. So kind of my closing thoughts. when it comes to New York State agriculture and Livingston County agriculture, I think we're in a tremendous position long term. We have what other states don't, and finally major companies are starting to see that, like Chobani, like Fairlife, Great Lakes. We have lots of water. That is a huge benefit to our behalf. I always joke with my father, you know, when our ancestors settled here in Livingston County, we must not have been the smart ones, because everybody moved out west to California and they've got these massive dairy facilities and massive land bases and beautiful weather and everything like that. And you know, it's finally coming around where we were the smart ones that settled here and stayed here and happy to be in that position. Because out there in the west, water is a huge, huge issue. And you know, we are going to see a day where that becomes more and more valuable of a resource that probably goes away from agriculture out in those western states that rely on it so heavily because population densities and things like that. Other thing, we're really close to metropolitan areas. You know, New York City's 6 hours away, Boston, Philadelphia, DC. That gives us huge value. Again, you go out west to, you know, where some of the larger agricultural operations are. I mean, it's 12 hours to get from, you know, Vegas to Los Angeles or something like that, right? It's not as close as we are to our metropolitan areas. So we have a huge benefit there. Simply put, America has been such a dominant power in agriculture for one simple reason. It's because the American farmer is the best to do it. And we have some of those people here in Livingston County. We've got great farmers here in the county that are stewards of their land, you know, stewards of their animals, that really care about the environment. You know, we take care of our own. We take care of our own crops and fields and animals and things like that. We've got great people here, and we've got great people coming up through the ranks to continue the great pride and heritage of Livingston County agriculture. You know, farmers are some of the most resilient people on earth. So markets might be bad right now, but over time, we'll get through it. We've always gone through some downturns in the marketplace, and we still come out strong, and we'll be fine. My biggest piece of advice, you know, I always like to leave is, you know, for farmers in the room, but also for non-farmers, you know, we are willing to open up the barn doors to anybody, at least for me speaking. Anybody that wants to come to the farm, you know, reach out and we'll get you on the farm, we'll give you a tour, we'll show you how we do it, everything like that. The average person in America right now is 3 generations removed from agriculture. So we have a huge, massive gap between what we're doing on our farms and what consumers think that we do. And it's pretty easy, you know, for an advertisement company, you know, to put something out there that might negatively show us in a bad light. I don't think we have anything to hide. Producers want to know where their food comes from. Open up the barn doors and have them come on in and come out to the farm. See what we do. We've got nothing to hide, right? So with that, I will open it up to Q&A and kind of take questions as they come and try my best to answer them.
Could we ask if we identified, you know, like if there was a farm or, you know, what brought them here? When they speak it.
Yeah.
I'm curious about who's in the audience.
All right.
So does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Anybody else? I don't want to butt in, but could you explain to the group some of the organizations that you use the I and the we
Yep.
on this last slide, and who the I's and the we's are? We know the I, but the, you know, the Farm Bureau.
Yeah. So at the national level, I serve on the National Milk Producers Federation Young Cooperators Board. So that's at the very national level. That looks at dairy farming practices on a whole across the country. A lot of that advocacy work takes place down in Washington, D.C. because we're at the national level trying to take care of those federal issues. Come down to the Northeast Dairy Producers Association. I serve on the Legislative Affairs Committee for that organization, and that kind of takes the Northeast region, but primarily, specifically, New York State. Then kind of come down to the county level. I'm on the Farmland Protection Board, you know, where we're trying to protect the farmland and things like that. I'm the president of the Livingston County Farm Bureau. So with that organization, the board and I work together to try to come up with policies that are specific to Livingston County or at the state level as well. And we do a lot of advocacy work out in Albany for that. I'm just trying to protect farmers' interests, rural community members' interests, and kind of push those advocacy and lobbying efforts.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Yes.
Jack, you mentioned land protection board that you are on. There's Genesee Valley Conservancy. What other options are out there, and any brief two-sentence summary about the differences of each of these organizations in protecting farmland?
Yeah, so I would point to the Conservancy. They have done a great job at protecting farmland. The Ag and Farmland Protection Board does play into that a little bit as well. But the Conservancy is a great resource. You have to submit an application to get your farmland into that. But highly recommend using them. They protected, I think it was over like 20,000 acres here in the county or something like. They celebrated some big goal here a couple of years ago, and it's been a real great resource for farmers. And it also helps the farmers too, because when we protect that farmland, the farmers are getting some money out of that as well. So I think it's great for the community in general, keeping our interest to, these green, luscious pastures here in Livingston County, but also helping the farmers with some income when they do protect their farmland and can't go into other development rights.
Did you put any of your land in it?
We have not put any of our land in it as of today. Just kind of what we have decided to do, sitting around the table. But there's many farms throughout the county that have taken advantage of the program. But we have not at the current moment in time, but something we have looked into.
Is there anybody in the audience that has? I sense that we probably have other farmers in the room. Anybody else that has put lands into the PDR program?
I should just say, my name is Dan Kai. I'm the Livingston County planner for the USDA's Natural Resource Conservation Service, and we provide land easements, both wetland reserve easements and agricultural land easements. It generally is a partnership between a local contributing agency and the federal government, like GVC, the Conservancy. So there's situations where we're both funding these conservation easements, but over there at the USDA office, we do offer conservation easements.
Other questions? Yes.
Jack, a 3,000 acre figure into solar farms, is that statewide?
That is Livingston County specific.
Livingston County.
Yeah, and I would almost estimate that number might be higher. Jake, you might know better.
I'd have to pull the numbers.
Yeah.
I know that EMC, we had a presentation back a couple of months ago kind of outlining the current state of solar, and it is north of 3,000.
Right.
For sure.
And some of these projects, included in that 3,000 number, and I'm going to venture out there and say that number is higher. Some of these projects are what they call in the queue. They might not have dirt moved, and there might not be solar fields sitting there yet, but they're in the process of. Right. They're in the process. It will happen. Right.
Are you seeing it on marginal farmland or prime farmland?
So
any feel for that?
We see it both ways. Our goal would be to not have it on any prime farmland, right? That's what we are really concerned about. But we see it both ways. Again, it's a very touchy issue because it's you get into landowners' rights, right? And I always find myself it's a catch-22, and which stance do you want to take on it? And I always say I don't go on somebody else's farm and tell them how to plant corn, because I wouldn't want somebody coming on mine to tell me how to do it. So it's a very sensitive topic and an issue, but I think overall most farmers would rather see their land be into pastures and growing corn on it and things like that. I'll tell you firsthand, if if I put all of my land that my family and I own into solar panels, we'd be making a lot more money than we would be milking cows, right?
Yeah.
But there's a little morality in there.
Like it's pretty.
Right. There's a little morality in there that, we don't want to do that. But we're also in a situation where, we have a younger generation that's interested in coming home to the farm, that, would like to make a career out of agriculture. Some people, aren't in that boat, right? So it's different to each individual, but yeah, it's definitely a sensitive subject.
I have a question. If the farm does choose to put their farm land in the protection,
Yep.
does that automatically limit the solar panel companies from coming in to even ask them if they want to convert their farmland to solar?
I believe so, right,
Yes,
Jake?
it does.
Yeah, it bars them from the ability to do that. It also
Like it becomes not even a conversation.
right. It also bars farmers from putting housing developments on there. If people want to come and build condominiums.
Develop
Right.
yourself on it.
Right.
Correct. You
Yeah.
cannot even develop yourself on it.
No, you cannot develop yourself on it.
So what if your kids want to go develop on it?
There are ways around it. You can, if you were to put some of your land into the protection fund, you can section out pieces. So I could section out 2 acres of land and say, okay, I've got a kid that might want to build a house, here one day. So the 98 acres sitting around this 2-acre parcel can be put into the protection program, and the 2 acres will, say I had a son that wanted to build a house there, he would be able to do that. But you kind of have to be forward thinking about that when you're doing that, and carving out those parcels and things like that. So yeah, trying to predict the future. Yes.
I really enjoyed the presentation, very
Thank you.
enlightening. And I like your business model revolving around the anaerobic digesters.
Yep.
Now, are they fully permitted? You have to get a discharge permit, a licensed operator? How sophisticated do you have to get it?
So
in that operation?
there's a lot of permitting that comes through with those, because you're talking, methane gases and
Right.
things like that. So we built our first methane digester in 2001. That burnt down in a fire in 2008. And then we decided to build a new one in 2016. And that one's still been online ever since. When we did that, luckily there was a lot of state and federal grant money at the time that helped us absorb some of that cost to build one. Some of that funding has kind of gone away now and kind of has shifted to, these solar companies have a lot of dollars and a lot of lobbying efforts, put in Albany and put in DC, and they've got a little bit more money than farmers have, and they have, shifted some of those grant dollars, towards those solar companies. But there's a lot of permits that we had to go through. We end up having, there's 2 guys from Germany and a guy from Italy. 3 engineers came out and kind of designed it and kind of took care of the process. So these anaerobic digesters are very popular in countries like Germany and
Yes.
in Europe.
And here too as well.
Right, and here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ability to take the food waste, I mean, you go to Germany where they have them, and a lot of people, their landfill would be taking their food waste from their house to this anaerobic digester site. They don't have a landfill like we do, and the community gets the electricity taken off their bills or completely covered, which is an interesting model in the EU. So there's a lot of permits, a lot of hoops to jump through, but you get good people to do it. It's a pretty easy process, I would say.
Jack, are you seeing any limitations with solar trying to load to the grid and the anaerobic digesters loading to the grid?
Yeah, so that's been a huge problem for us personally, and a problem that's going on across the state is, so a lot of these substations in our towns, don't really have the capacity to take on any more. For us, personally speaking, in kind of the town of York area, we had purchased a second engine for our digester. So instead of, having the output capacity to power 500 homes, that we could do 1,000 homes. Dealing with the electrical company was the biggest pain, National Grid, RG&E. Essentially, it came down to the substation in the town of York didn't have any more capacity because there were 2 solar projects ahead of us in the queue, and the solar projects were taking it from us. Answer we got was, if you want to upgrade the substation, you can pay the $2 million, and you can do that. And obviously, we said no to that. But so we do have this issue with solar companies coming in and taking that capacity on the grid and on the substations, where it kind of disadvantage is us. And one of the things I always like to highlight with our digester is what we've done is created a renewable energy system where we took up about 1 acre of land to do it. We didn't take up 1,000 acres to create a renewable energy site. So I'm a big fan of anaerobic digesters. Would love to see more of them, throughout the state and throughout the country. I think they're great. Yes.
What's the lifespan of one of the digesters?
Yeah. So I think it's really more on upkeep and taking care of it. I think you could see it last for 40 or 50 years. We just went through a big. We kind of hit our 10-year mark this year with our digester, and we had to go through a big overhaul and get all the manure and food waste out of it and have clean it out and take the cover off of it and get a new cover. That was a long 6-month process for us, a little bit more than what we thought we were going to venture into, and of course you got it all opened up, so now you're replacing old parts and things like that. So I would say as long as you continue to do the upkeep on it, I think probably 40, 50 years. I don't see why it wouldn't last that long. The one main thing though is how much will technology change over that time, right? Technology changes in a blink of an eye, and in 40 to 50 years, would it still be economical to do it the way we're doing it? But don't have the crystal ball for that. Any other questions?
Okay. I do have some.
Okay.
I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance.
Yeah.
So Patty and I have been talking about, and we did Katie too, we talked a little bit about the university using the biodigestion and energy production. What about DOE and our public schools? I mean, do we have an opportunity there with our local schools, K through 12, to be a part of that or not?
So there is an opportunity there. So I know at Pavilion Central School, we pick up food waste from there, and there's specific bins that the students would, discard their food waste into. We try to keep like the plastics and things like that out of the mix, but I'm sure we can try to find an avenue to get into more public schools here.
So do they knock on your door, or do you knock on theirs?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Probably be more them knocking on our door and trying to find out about it. At the current moment in time, we've really kind of taken the whole Wegmans, Whole Foods, Amazon kind of big business model and kind of followed them around. But we would be open to working with the public school system.
Great.
Yeah.
Leased land.
Yep.
Versus owned land.
Yep.
Is there a lot of transition in leased land, or is it primarily the majority of our farms are all owned by our farmers?
No, I would say there is a lot of leased land out there that farmers rent.
Is that part
I
of the
wouldn't have
financial
the-
figure going into the dollars spent
That's-
within the county?
That's part of that figure,
Okay.
yeah, is the rental land that the farmers are paying, yes. I don't have a stat on, how much leased land there is compared to, farmer-owned land. I wouldn't know what that is, but I can tell you for our personal situation, it's probably about, I would say probably close to about 20% of the ground that we work is rented ground, leased land. And we have seen, some of that shift into solar as well. You know, because typically leased land, that's either a farmer that, you know, has retired, or it's, you know, maybe been in that family for 3 generations and it's just gotten passed down, but it's never been an active farm for, you know, that person's lifetime. And again, it's a little bit more lucrative to have that land in solar panel capacity.
So how do you keep it in leased land? Well, if we lease our land, and our generation doesn't want to do it, and my kid's generation doesn't want to do it, and we don't want the solars to come in the next generation, where would you recommend somebody like me going to keep my land leased in the next generation and not go into solar farms or something?
Go to your local farmer and ask them if they'd like to rent your land.
No, they do.
Yeah,
They do.
okay.
But how do we make our kids, the next generation, do that? You.
You got to make sure that you tell your kids that you keep this in agricultural use only, and hammer them down with that.
Henry's done it too.
So we see a lot of farms on a daily basis. We encourage them for longer leases. Like before you see 1, 2, 3-year leases. Now it's 5, 10, 15-year leases. If you sign that 15 years, that's pretty locking. They really can't do anything with that as long as you have a good lease. You know what I mean? This
Yeah,
longer
we have some good
leases.
leases. Yeah, we have some good leases. I'm not saying that.
But it's
good
do longer
leases on
terms.
land.
You know what I mean?
But how do we make sure the next generation does it without turning it into that kind of thing?
So you could lease the land for a longer period of time, right? You could sign a 25-year lease, you know, with that agricultural, you know, the farm that you're leasing to, right? And that would prevent your children from, you know, turning it into solar panels or something like that.
Because you can build escalators into it, taxes go up so many percentage points, you can raise your rents in those percentage points as well.
I would hammer down on your kids to say, keep this in agricultural use,
You
right?
play basketball with my son. You think you're gonna down on him?
I know. But, yeah.
The other question, I have two other questions. One is, currently, you know, I think one of the sub-bullets of what you presented here, which was all wonderfully presented, so thank you for being here with us tonight. You mentioned water and the importance of the water. We do see a lot of projects to control and manage that water, so tiling and land leveling and things like that. Are we looking at retention in any capacity based on, you know, what we're seeing as water volumes, natural versus regular volume versus high volume flood events or whatever? Do we have the capacity to retain some of that water for, you know, replenish and
Yeah, so I do see us having the capacity to retain some of that water. Dairy farmers are doing that already you know, on a smaller scale. You know, we take our water that we use to wash the milk silos with, that goes into another tank, and that's kind of warm water, and we reuse that water to, you know, spray down the parlor, fill the buckets up, you know, things like that. I think farmers are great recyclers. We try to use things over and over and over again until we finally punched all the pennies out of it. But I do see, you know, a larger scale system that, you know, we could probably potentially see here where we can retain some of that water and use it for, you know, other things that we need to use it for. Yeah, we're very beneficial here that we have the amount of water that we do.
To add to that, Alex, New York State has multiple programs through ag and markets, funding programs through the local soil and water conservation districts that promote those types of projects, like the Agricultural Environmental Management Program, Ag Non-Point Source, and Climate Resilient Farming all support local stormwater retention on ag ground. Those projects are all funded and can be applied for by farms through the Soil and Water Conservation District.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then my last question is really, I hear from a lot of farmers, not just in Nunde, but throughout the county, that really there's no place else on earth, you know, this is like the Emerald City, right? There's no place else on earth like Livingston County, land, infrastructure, you know, weather. And is that the case? Do you get a sense of that? Are there other counties and areas in the state that have the same kind of productivity capacity or greater than we do? Or are we really sitting on that gold mine of ag land?
I think there are other counties out there in New York State that compete with us in an agricultural sense, but I would say we are right up there.
Yeah.
Number one, you know, there might be other counties that can challenge us a little bit as far as, you know, ag land, infrastructure, you know, capacity that they have. Man, we're one of the best, right? Very fortunate to be where we are. I always call it our little breadbasket of the world. And agriculture is here to stay in Livingston County. It's not going away. We've got, you know, great farmers here that want to continue to protect agriculture, but we've got resources, which is, you know, huge for us. That will really play, you know, a vital role going forward, you know, 10, 20, 30 years out from now. You know, whether it's our proximity to, you know, milk plants and things like that, having the land base that we do, having the water is huge. Really the things that are really going to kind of impact agriculture and my lenses going forward here in Livingston County and New York State is what comes out of Albany. I think that is going to have the biggest impact. This overtime thing, I mean, that is a real feel that we're feeling. And again, we are price takers, so I don't get to say, okay, well, my cost of production, you know, went up 20%. I don't pass that cost on to consumers. No farmer does, no farmer can. And that's going to be the biggest challenge that we have, is how do politics, both at the federal and the state level, you know, concern us here in Livingston County. But I think, you know, we've got tremendous people that advocate on behalf of agriculture here in Livingston County and abroad. I think with those advocacy efforts, you know, we can, you know, kind of keep our gem what it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so if I could have just a follow-up question. Yeah. You did really well in typing up that brief, so we've got a little bit of time. I'm looking at the agenda here going, yeah, you gave us some great time for Q&A. But last question for me, that would be, you know, we look at this, and I'm thinking of the cold blast.
Yep.
We look at high water events, you know, we look at drought periods.
Yep.
And the impact that it has on our agricultural lands, and where does that put us, you know, when you talk about the overtime on the farms, in stabilizing farm activities, agritourism, alternative uses or shared uses of the land, to minimize the impact. You know, if I'm thinking generating revenue, if agritourism picks up.
Yep.
And so the yellow brick road is our ag tour when we have that in the county. That's been fantastic too. But where we can have agritourism, but you also want to maintain kind of the stability and not have invasives and things brought into the farm that would be detrimental to, you know, the health of the farm's operations. So I'm sure that's probably on your radar, how to generate agritourism and that extra revenue.
Yeah, so, you know, like I said, you know, we try to keep the barn doors open to the general public. Come on in, you know, we'll invite you in, free of charge for us, right? We just want to show you, you know, how we do it and let you know where and how your food is made and where it comes from. Where I see agritourism as kind of that generating part of a business and a value-added operation to an existing agricultural organization. Where I see it specifically in the county, you know, today would be at, you know, those breweries, the distilleries, the wineries, the places like that So I'll take Woodlawn Distillery there in Linwood, right around the corner from me. That's a 700-acre farm that, raises their own crops. They run about 100 head of beef cattle on that farm. And, they've been there they've got 4 generations on that place now. What they decided to do with building a distillery and, growing some specific crops to then be able to make their own, spirits. I think that is a huge agritourism benefit because now they're getting people into their facility to, sit down and taste their whiskey. But at the same time, you get to have that conversation with them about, we grew, this specific type of wheat or this specific type of corn to make this product. I think that's where you kind of connect the consumer and agriculture together, is the story behind it. That's kind of where I see agritourism in the county as a value added at an economic level. I don't see agritourism in a sense of, we're going to charge everybody $10 to come and pet a calf. Maybe that's out there, and sure people do. I was just in Ireland 2 months ago, and was driving by a place, and a big sign up there, and it said, "Come and hold a lamb." And underneath it was 15 euros to hold a lamb, which is about 20 USD.
Yeah.
So it was like, guy's making money hand over fist, but he's got a lot of people that, your New York City people, your Boston people that go over there, and they've never seen a cow before, they've never seen, a sheep before, and they just wanted to hold a baby lamb, right? But I don't see that in our sense here in Livingston County, as far as agritourism that
So
way.
is there any school that we have in our county that actually has field trips scheduled to farm?
Yes,
Yeah.
there's lots. Mulligan Farms over in Avon do a big kinder farming event. They've hosted it for the last 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
That brings in like 900 students from Livingston County, from Monroe County. We do field trips all the time at my family's farm. Got lots of, students coming in. We also have different organizations and things like that, but a lot of it is student-based. And there are tons and tons of farm tours that take place. And I also think we are starting to see that in the school district system now too, because a lot of these FFA chapters are coming back to life. Where, like when I was in high school, 10, 11, 12 years ago, that never existed. Taking an agricultural course didn't exist. And you're really starting to see these FFA chapters come back to life, which is a great positive thing. We need to get people involved in agriculture and, show them that, there's a lot more to agriculture than just milking the cow, right? Or planting the corn, planting corn, right? You could be a food scientist, you could be a, manufacturer. There are just hundreds of thousands of jobs in the agricultural career field. And, having these FFA programs that, want to come to farms and take tours and speak to farmers and things like that, it's been a huge positive impact for that younger generation. And I think we will see the fruits of that labor pay off, when these high schoolers, get into that career placement field.
Okay.
Wow.
So field trips, and we have FFA, and we have 4-H, right? 4-H is still doing some farming and ag and things like that.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, any other questions for Jack?
Yes.
Sue?
When you were talking about overtime and how that would impact, would it be that you would, to get the same man hours, hire more folks and not pay overtime? Would that
So it's
be a way to work around that? Or
Yeah.
is it more because your people have to be so trained and experienced to make them valuable to you?
Yeah, so, it kind of varies from farm to farm on how they want to kind of work around that overtime hour schedule that we are dealing with. At the current moment in time, personally speaking, we have not gone and hired more people. but I did sit down before the first of the year when overtime got pushed down 4 more hours, and I put the pencil to the paper to see, you know, would it be a benefit to us to go hire 2 or 3 more people, right? For myself personally, this go around, it didn't make sense to do that. But when it comes down to 40 hours, it will make sense to do that. But part of the problem is the people that are here that are doing those jobs, they want the hours, right? So most of those are foreign-born employees. They are here for one reason and one reason only, and that is to make money and to work, right? You know, I can't tell you how many of my guys, you know, give me a bunch of crap because, you know, they've got to take it. I make them, you know, it's at least one day a week you don't go to work, right? And then, you know, we've got it set up where once a month for one individual, they'll end up taking 2 days off, you know, in one given week of that month, right? And they don't like that, right? Because they're here to work and they want to make money and, you know, they want to go back home. So that, you know, is kind of an issue. The other issue with the, you know, immigration thing is these jobs are skill-based jobs. I mean, we can't just throw anybody in there and expect them to be able to do it. There's a lot of safety concerns. You know, my big push is animal welfare concern, right? If I have somebody new that just started off, you know, on the job today, well, they don't know, you know, they might not have the knowledge and the background in the sense of what's good for that animal and what's bad for that animal. So these people are very, very important people. They're very skilled. They're very trained. And we can't have a revolving door of a new person coming in every single day because that's not good for the animal at hand. And, you know, us as farmers, you know, our main priority is to, you know, take care of our land and take care of our animals. So it does the animal a disservice when we have that revolving door.
And it's a safety issue for your employees.
And it's also a safety issue, right? You know, where are the pinch points? You know, where could you get hurt? You know, things like that. I mean, like when we hire a new employee, we have a pretty extensive onboarding, you know, program that they have to go through. But still, you know, I'd rather have that person here for 5 years than a new person once every month, right? It's just not a productive way to run a business. Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I know.
I just want to know what your thoughts are where like the raw milk sales sit in Livingston County and then the rest of the state.
Yes. So raw milk. So I had a couple people from Livingston County, you know, reach out to me that wanted to see some advocacy done on that. And at our state annual meeting for Farm Bureau, we put into our resolution bylaws that we would allow, we support the sale of raw milk, and we also support the sale of raw milk off farm for up to like a 20 or 30 mile radius. The whole state Farm Bureau put in at their annual meeting. So we support it for a New York Farm Bureau sense at Livingston County. Personally, when I advocate for it, I think it should be fine. I think farmers should have the right to a capitalist economy, and they should be able to sell their milk where they want to sell their milk, right? And I also think it's consumer beware, right? You know, I'm not saying I'm recommending anybody drink raw milk, but I think farmers should have the access to a free marketplace, and you know, being able to go to a farmer's market and sell raw milk. I think you should be able to do that. I don't think it's fair that, you know, if I lived in, you know, Chautauqua County and I was trying to sell raw milk, somebody from Rochester has to drive down to Chautauqua County to, you know, come on my farm so I can sell it. I don't think that's right, personally speaking, and for Farm Bureau speaking as well. But by no means am I promoting, you know, go out and drink raw milk and they'll be healthy and strong and whatever else.
No, it just seems like other states are being not so sympathetic. That's what was my question.
Yeah, I don't think other
seems like
states
they're
are.
encouraging
I
it.
think other states have a real pushback on it, and you know, I think that's kind of the lobbying and advocacy efforts, you know, are other states pushing it as hard as, you know, some people here in New York State have tried to push it. But yeah.
There is a farm right in Leicester that's selling, that's all
I
it
know.
sells around there.
Yep.
So, in every marketing organization, whether it's a co-op or a private, if you're contracted to them, some of them will allow you to put,
So much out.
sell so much raw milk. Some say no and you violate your contract, so it's, you have to know the rules, but it's available right here, right now.
Mhm.
Mary, did you have a question?
It's kind of a spin-off. I wanted to, when we did the Canisius Lake Watershed Management Plan, we created an ag focus group, and a number of the folks in this room were in attendance. One of the things that the farmers asked was, can you please bring our non-farming community together with our farming community? This is one of the reasons why the EMC chose to hold this. My sense is we got a lot of farming community here. But what I wanted to do is just ask the group and also Jack, is there anything else that so the point of bringing that group together was so that our non-farmers could see all of what farming does and ag does for the county, for the environment. But my question is there anything else that this group, EMC, can do like that? You know, what else is on your list of things that we could do to educate or support, or as an EMC, you know, what would be next? You know, this is a fantastic presentation, hoping it's meeting the needs of the ag focus group partners. Just throwing it out there, is there something on your wish list that we could do as an environmental management council?
Think about that, I guess, if anybody has any thoughts or comments. And then just before we let you off the hook, could this 40-hour, you know, limitation on, is there an incentive in there somewhere to look at automation?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think as we continue to go down to 40 hours a week, you know, there's a lot of automation that is available at our fingertips right now that, you know, we have specifically on the dairy side. You know, we have a robotic teat dipper in our parlor. You know, that was kind of cut down on some labor costs. There are robotic milking machines that are out there, and people, you know, have them here in the county. And I think, you know, that will continue to progress, automation in that sense. And also, you know, I mean, John Deere and Case and those big tractor manufacturers, they also do have automation coming online. It's not really available at our fingertips right now, but who's to say what 10 years of technology will bring? And, you know, I think in my lifetime, we might have, you know, instead of driving tractors in a field, that might be somebody sitting at a desk managing 10 different tractors. I think that is probably kind of possible in my lifetime, right?
I have been surprised driving up 390 sometimes around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 in the morning, and I see these big radiating headlights coming across from the side. It's like they're out there on the field, and it's incredible. And also, you know, those operations, pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
Yeah.
We keep you on the hook to invite you back.
Yes.
Thank you. Hang on one second. The glare is on your. I thought it would be such a beautiful backdrop, and it's being really naughty. So.
Okay. Well.
There we go. Excellent. Handshake now. Thank you, gentlemen.
What's not gonna do it?
Yay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I didn't think that through.
Absolutely.
So did the drone take